Welcome everyone to Daf Yomi 1 week at a time, Masechet Nedarim. This is our fourth shiur, and today we are going to be reviewing Daf 21 through 28, and I'm very excited to see everyone. Okay, we are going to start. We're starting the third chapter of Masechet Nedarim, and we have a Mishnah at the bottom of Daf 20 that tells us that there are four types of vows, of Nedarim, that are automatically void, meaning invalid. They do not have to be annulled by someone else. Rather, as soon as you say them, they are void. What are the four types of Nedarim, the four types of vows? One is called Nedarim Ziruzin. Ziruz means to make someone do something, to hurry something up. So we will define that as a motivational vow, taking a vow to motivate someone to do something. The Gemara is going to give us many examples of each of these things. The second one is an exaggerated vow. The third one is a shogeg. So shogeg means unintentional. And the third one is onsin. The word ones means something that is out of our control. So the Mishnah actually gives us one example, right? If you're using a vow as a negotiating tactic, right, this will be forbidden to me, right? Konam, this will be forbidden to me if I pay more than, right, $5, right? You insert value here. Right, and then the other guy says, well, if I sell it to you for less than whatever, so I'm not budging on this price, and if I don't, right, if I sell it for less than this, so then this thing will be forbidden to me. So the Mishnah says this is not a valid vow because you don't really mean what you're saying, right? You're using it as a tactic, but you don't really want to forbid the object that you are arguing over. And it's interesting because in the previous chapter we were talking about intent. So here the Mishnah is saying, we assume that you do not mean what you're saying. And if you do not mean what you're saying, the vow is seen as void or invalid. Okay, let's go to the top of Daf 21. The Gemara tells us that the oath is, that the vow, the neder, is void because at the outset, meaning in the beginning, it wasn't clear what you meant, or maybe, as we mentioned, right, you didn't mean what you said, meaning when you said that this should be forbidden to you if I buy it for more than a certain amount, did you really mean it, or were you just using it as a bargaining tool, right? What if the vow was very specific, right? What if I say, I will not pay over $4.25, and the guy says I will not sell it for less than $6.50. Maybe when you're being so exact, maybe it's because you mean it. Like, this is my, right, as people say, this is the wholesale value, or this is my cost, right? The cost is X, I'm not going below it. Or what if the spread is very high, right? Someone says it's $5 and you're like, fine, I'll pay one, right? That does not seem like a reasonable discussion, right? Do you really mean I will not, I will not, I will not really, pay less or more than that, right? The Gemara says, right, people tend to speak this way and they don't really mean it. Yes, right, Lynn is mentioning Avraham and Ephron from last week's Parsha of Chaye Sarah, right, when they negotiate, and Lynn is asking, right, Ephron didn't really mean, right, that he would not receive payment, right? Again, right? He says, no, I'll take it for free, or I'll give it to you for free. It's an excellent question, right? Does he really mean it or not? we will see also for this week's parsha. We'll get it later on, but right, Yaakov and Esav, when Esav sells the birthright, right? Does he really mean to sell it? Right. So that I think is an excellent question, right? And here the Gemara is trying to understand. What are people's intentions, right? When I say, no, 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 I won't spend less than X, do I really mean it or not? Um, right? So, Chachamim, right, the sages say that you actually need to go to a sage in order to annul these vows. They're not automatically void, meaning the sages can annul it, but you need to go and ask to annul it. Or, right, another opinion is no, they are invalid from the outset, and they do not have any substance to them. Right, the Gemara continues on Daf 21 that you can annul regular vows if they're similar to these four types of vows, right? But if you only have regret, right? We haven't really discussed this yet, but there are two ways um, of going back or annulling or revoking a vow. One is finding a petach, right? Meaning, if I would have known X, I would never have taken this vow. That's called a petach. On the other hand, another thing to say is what's called charata, right? Regret. I really regret. I didn't mean, right, or not I didn't mean it, but if I would have known that it would cause so much hardship, I never would have taken this vow in the first place. So here the Gemara says maybe regret is not enough to annul a vow. Right? Maybe it's not enough to annul a regular vow, or maybe it is, and that's going to be discussed later on in this Masechet. Right? So we ask, right? Was your mind settled when you made this vow? Remember, we discussed previously, right? Sometimes people take vows because they get very angry, right? So we ask, were you calm when you took this vow, or were you upset, right? And if you say no, right, I was really upset when I took the vow, that seems to be enough to release someone from the vow that they took. And here at the bottom of 21, the Gemara gives different instances where people regretted making a vow and how the vows were annulled based on that regret. So we see that regret is a way to annul a vow. Okay, let's go to the top of Daf 22. When you take a vow, they actually look at your deeds in heaven. Remember, we discussed how the Torah is against taking vows. It's not a good thing. And therefore, the Gemara tells us on Daf 22 that, you should just realize that when you basically open your mouth, then in heaven, right, they're going to open your books, right, and be very careful to see, how pious you are and, what you really deserve or not. The Gemara doesn't agree that you can use fear of this heavenly judgment as a means to annul the vow, right? As a petach, right? Again, the Gemara says everyone's going to say, right? If they say to you, do you realize what they're doing up in heaven, right? They're checking, the books, and right, doesn't that make you feel afraid? Everyone is going to say yes, and therefore that the sages say that's not enough of a petach, because everyone's going to say that they're afraid, even if they meant to take the vow originally. So therefore, that's not enough to annul the vow. However, the Gemara says that you can annul the vow by saying, had I known that it was prohibited to make a vow, right, to take this neder, and that I could be liable for death, I would never have taken the neder in the first place. So that is a valid petach, right, a valid way to annul the vow. Right, the Gemara continues on some more negative connotations to taking a vow, right? If you take a vow, it's like you're building an altar, and here it's not the good kind, but the bad kind, right? What's called a bama. It is an altar that is outside of the temple when that was prohibited. And therefore, we're going to try to annul it when we can. Okay. Next, right? And the Gemara continues, right? You're called evil, right? You're called a rasha if you make a neder, and even if you keep it, right? You might think, oh, if I take it and I keep it, so then that's great. The Gemara seems to imply you shouldn't take it in the first place, right? And if you get angry, right, that's something that leads to taking a vow, then you're going to suffer all types of Gehenom, right, of hell. Here, right, this concept that anger leads to a lack of control, it also leads to suffering on many different levels. And there's a story about Ula who was traveling to Israel and he was with two other people, and one guy got so mad that he killed the other. And then, so the moral of the story was, right, anger makes you lose control. But also the Gemara continues and says that anger makes you lose your Torah learning, right? If you think you're a scholar and you get angry, that is extremely dangerous on many levels, right? And here the Gemara continues to tell us that if the Jewish people hadn't sinned, then God wouldn't have needed to get angry at the Jewish people, right? If you read most of Tanakh, right, most of the prophets, God is very angry at the Jewish people because they are not keeping the mitzvot, they're not keeping the Torah, right? And the Gemara says we would only have needed the 5 books of the Chumash plus Joshua plus Yehoshua. Otherwise, we wouldn't have needed anything else because, right, from there things tend to go downhill. So interesting here, it seems, right? God also gets angry, and there are consequences to that anger. Okay, back to oaths and vows, right? So the Gemara tells us that usually we do not annul a shvu'ah, an oath, just a vow, just a neder, unless it's between a husband and a wife. We want to make sure that they can be together, and therefore we will annul that type of oath. And the law is that we actually do annul vows and even oaths if the person regrets it. So we say that charata, regret, is a reason to annul the vow. And here, at the bottom of 22, there's a story about someone who wants to annul a vow, but they can't find the petach, right? They can't find a way to, an opening, metaphorically. And basically, Rav Nachman, who's sitting in judgment, is getting annoyed, right? What do you mean that, you meant it? What do you mean this is what you said, right? And then the person says, if I would have known that it was going to get you upset, I never would have taken the vow. And the Gemara says, well, that is a petach, right? We found the petach. We found the way to annul the vow. Daf 23. One second, I see another comment. And Ula lied about his offense as he witnessed the murder at the time, so he did not get murdered himself. In the moment, yes, correct, right? Lynn, I skipped the end of the story, but Ula is basically persuaded to lie because he himself is scared that he's going to get killed. And correct, meaning the Gemara gives him the ability to speak untruthfully because it is a way to save his life, meaning he is really afraid for his life. And we're going to see at the end of today's shiur, you can even take a vow in order to save your life or out of fear, and that is permissible. So we are going to see that in a little bit. Excellent, thank you. The top of Daf 23, we have more similar stories of people looking for, again, that petach, looking for a way to annul the vow. And when the person got so annoyed, they said, if you would have realized that the person was going to get so annoyed, right, I never would have taken the vow in the first place, right? That became the mechanism by which they annulled the vow at the end. Okay. The next point is that this petach, this opening, this way to annul the vow, could be something that is unexpected, right? Because they didn't know that this person was going to get upset. Because again, you couldn't have anticipated it excuse me, I'll take it back. The opposite, right? The Gemara says if you couldn't have anticipated this outcome, that is not a valid petach. It is not a valid way of annulling the vow. The next story, we have Abaye and his wife, and they're arguing whose relative should marry her daughter. And in the heat of the moment, right, again, we see many of these vows come in an argument, right? Abaye takes a vow that his wife shouldn't have any benefit if she doesn't listen to him. And basically, she doesn't care, and she doesn't listen to him, and she marries off her daughter to her relative. And then he said, oh, I didn't realize she wasn't going to listen to me. I thought she was going to listen to me, right? And the rabbi said, right, you can be released from your vow because you didn't realize that, right? You didn't mean it, right? You didn't realize that she wasn't going to listen to you. He just used it as, again, as we mentioned in the beginning, if you're using it as part of an argument, as part of a negotiation, you don't really mean to prohibit yourself from whatever item you were talking about. Okay, so that is a motivational vow. If you're doing it just to win an argument or to win a negotiation, we assume you did not mean to take the vow literally, and therefore it is annulled, either void completely from the onset or easily annulled. Next Mishnah, in Daf 23. If someone wants to take a vow to pressure his friend, let's say to eat at his house, right? So then he can say, right, any vow that I take against you is void, right? I didn't mean to take any vows, and that actually does work if he remembers it. But again, right, it seems that people used this type of language in order to persuade someone to do something, right? So here it seems, right, with your friend, you're not angry with your friend. You're like, oh, swear to me, right, you're going to come, if you don't come to my house for lunch tomorrow, you can never borrow anything from me ever again, right? You don't mean that. You just want them to come for lunch. So the Gemara explains what's missing from the Mishnah. We have to get some backstory. What's the story? Right, the friend won't eat with him, right? He, for whatever reason, either they're in a fight or he doesn't want to take advantage of him, and then he takes a neder against him, right? And again, this is another type of motivational vow. You're trying to get someone to do something, right? And if someone doesn't want his vows to have any force, then on Rosh Hashanah, right, and this is actually something that we do, right, we say, all of my vows for this year should be, right, null and void, right? We say, kol nidre, right? So we say, from last year and from this year, meaning if I ever say, right, I promise I'm going to meet you tomorrow, and then something comes up and I didn't come, I didn't really mean to take a vow, right? And therefore, maybe I can rely on the fact that on Yom Kippur, I said, that's it, I'm not taking any more vows. Okay, right? There's a machloket here if we should teach all of these laws, or will it cause people to take more vows upon themselves, right? If I say that, oh, it doesn't really mean anything, so then people might be a little bit more free with their language, and we want to make sure that people are not so free with their language. Okay, Daf 24. If you make a vow to pressure your friend, let's say to receive a gift, no, you have to take this present, right? The person can say, you were just doing it to give me honor, and me refusing this honor is, right, me refusing the gift is for my honor, so it's okay, right? So then the vow is void, right? Again, these are motivational vows, and again, here the Gemara discusses, is it automatically void, or do you need to go to someone in order to annul it, right? What happens if you say, right, you cannot have any benefit from me till you give my son a gift, right? So of whatever it is, right? So Rabbi Meir says that works, right? You can't benefit till he gives the gift. The Chachamim say no. The vower can annul the vow even without a sage by saying, "Oh, never mind, right? My son doesn't need that gift anymore," or I'll pretend it's as if he got it already, and therefore I'm going to annul the vow. Um, right? Let's say again the person wanted to invite his friend over, and he said that he would invite him over, and then the invitee tells the inviter, well, you take a neder, right, that you're forbidden from benefit if I don't come, right? I promise I'm going to come. If I don't come, so then you should take a vow that I can't, again, borrow any sugar from you, right? And then what happens? What happens if that person, the invitee, right? So he gets sick and then can't make it. So what happens to that person, right? They meant to come, um, and now they don't. Are they forbidden from, again, borrowing sugar for the rest of their lives? The Gemara says no. This is what was called a neder onsin. That was our fourth category, which are right vows that are out of our control. Right, if you get sick and you can't make it to the party the next day, you are not forbidden from benefit because that was out of your control, and therefore it is not valid. Right, again, that is that type of neder. We'll get back to that neder in a little bit. Let's go to the next Mishnah. The next Mishnah is, excuse me, a vow of exaggeration, right? It's called neder Havai, and that means, right, I swear, right, I take a vow that, right, this is going to be forbidden to me if, right, if I, I just, basically, I just saw 600,000 people, right? And I swear, right, or I take a vow, right? If I didn't see these 600,000 people, so then, right, again, I can't get benefit from you. Or I just saw a snake as large as a beam, right? These seem to be common exaggerations, or they seem to be completely false, right? How could a snake be, right here, they're talking about the beam of an olive press. That seems to be extremely unlikely, and therefore the entire vow is invalid, right? It's based on something false, and therefore it is invalid. So the Gemara asks, a neder like this is invalid. However, it seems maybe an oath, a shvu'ah, which again we've seen till now, is more serious. Maybe that would be valid, right? So if you say, I swear, right, that, right, let all the fruits of the world should be forbidden to me if I didn't see 600,000 people, again, this seems to be invalid and you could benefit from those fruits, right? What if someone said, right, I saw an anthill, and maybe they meant, right, the number of people who came out of Egypt, but he meant that he saw 600,000 ants and not people, right? So again, that seems to be not what most people would say is what you meant, and therefore we do not, right? The Gemara says at the top of 25, we always assume that a person means the regular meaning of the word. I just saw 600,000 people. That's what I would assume, not ants. People don't call ants people, even if that's not what you yourself intended. Right? And here there's a story about a person who owed money to someone else, and he went to court, and the court makes the borrower swear, right? The borrower says, no, 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 I never took the money, or I returned it. So the borrower swears that he paid it back. And when he swears, right, then the Gemara tells us that you need to swear by what the court is making you swear, meaning you can't, right? If the court says, swear that you paid it back, and you know that you didn't, but you're kind of pretending that it means something else, that's not a valid oath, right? And here's a story of a man who right, wanted to trick the court, and he puts money in his walking stick. And he goes to court and he says, "Oh, I paid the guy back. I paid the guy back." And then he says, um, you know, "Oh," he says to the lender, "Hold my walking stick for a minute while I take the oath," right? And he takes an oath. I gave, right, everything that I paid back is in the hands of the lender, because the lender is literally holding a stick full of money. But it's false. The lender gets so mad he breaks the stick, right, and out comes money, right? So from here, the Gemara says that you cannot like falsify a vow using these tricks. It doesn't work, and the vow is null, null and void. Right, and there's another case of when Moshe makes the Jewish people swear by the Torah, right, and by his own intentions, right? Meaning Moshe had specific intentions. The Jewish people cannot come up with their own intentions based on whatever they were thinking at that time. Interesting, we mentioned like snakes being very large, and they can't be as large as a beam. The Gemara is like, wait, there are stories of snakes that are as large as beams, right? So don't say that there's no such thing. So then the Gemara says maybe it's not an exaggeration. And then it says, well, maybe it meant that it was a ridged back snake like the beam of an olive press, and that doesn't exist. So again, creating a scenario where it is an exaggeration. Okay, I saw a few more questions. Hold on, let's go to our questions. At the holidays, we are only undoing inadvertent mistaken vows with kol nidre. Yes, correct. So Lynn is saying that when we say kol nidre, we are nullifying inadvertent vows, not vows that we take with full knowledge, right? And therefore, the Gemara discusses if you remember that you said that, and then you take a vow, right? Would it be seen as valid or not, right? Meaning, if you're taking it even though you remembered that you made this vow, it may or may not count. So that is an excellent point. Next point, Lynn. I've heard non-Jews use the same neder language as they are held accountable above for not doing what they have promised, or is this just an indication of poor character on their part? I'm not sure what you mean. I'm not sure. But there is, right, you're saying are non-Jews held to the same standard if they take a vow? Is that what you're asking? I'm not sure. It's an excellent question. It's definitely it's a good question. I'm not sure. Look, I think in general people should mean what they say. So I would think that they're held accountable, but I'm not sure. Meaning this is definitely coming under Jewish law. I guess what you're saying is, let's say I'm in a business deal with a non-Jew. I would imagine that a Jewish court will say, right, if the non-Jew took an oath, we're going to hold him to it. I would imagine. I think we want to create a society that's functional, and in order to have a functional society, we need people to mean what they say. But that is an excellent question. Okay, let's go to the next Mishnah on Daf 25. Nidresh gagot, right? These are vows that are unintentional. What does that mean? What does that mean, an unintentional vow? So Lynn just alluded to it beforehand, but here the Mishnah gives us an example, right? What do I say? This is prohibited to me if I ate if I ate the last piece of cake last night, right? And then I forgot that I really did eat that last piece of cake last night. Like I just forgot, right? Or that I didn't drink, right? Or that I won't eat, or that I won't drink, right? And you forget. So you don't mean to take that, right? You really meant I didn't do it, but you forgot and you really did. The Mishnah says that this is shogeg, this is unintentional, and because your heart and your mouth, your heart and your mouth aren't the same, then this vow is void, right? It's not a valid oath or vow because you didn't mean it, and therefore it doesn't count, right? My wife is forbidden to me because she stole from me or she hit my son, right? And then you find out she didn't steal from you or she didn't hit your son. So then she's not forbidden to you because you didn't mean it, right? You meant it because of a specific thing. Right? What if a person sees a whole group of people eating his figs and he says those should all be forbidden to you? And then he finds out that his father and his brother were there as well, right? And he didn't mean to forbid them from eating it. He just didn't want everybody else. So here is a machloket. Beit Shammai say they can eat, meaning the father and the brother can still eat from the figs, but all the other ones can't, right? Meaning it's the vow is partially annulled. And partially not. Beit Hillel says no, everyone can eat them. And we're going to see this concept of if you partially annul a vow, then some people say you have annulled the entire vow. Let's continue, right? Oaths that are inadvertent, right? Shvuot shgaga are also invalid. And right, again, here there's a discrepancy what this means, but it seems to be, right, that seems to be the statement. Right, again, if you did not mean what you said, so then again, we say that that you the vow is annulled. And again, as I mentioned, Rabbi Akiva teaches that if you annul part of the vow, right, everyone is forbidden from eating figs. Oh, no, 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 sorry, I didn't mean you, right? So now if you are allowing them, they were part of the everybody, so now everybody is allowed to partake. So now there's a discussion of how we understand this, right? If I knew, right, if the person says, if I knew my father was there, I would have said, my father could eat, but you can't. So then everybody agrees that that is not partially annulling a vow. It's saying there were, right, it's not one big vow and now half of it is okay. It's there were two separate vows. My father shouldn't have ever been included in the first one, and therefore, even though he is now permitted, everyone else is still forbidden. But if he says, right, right, if he says, I would have said, you and right, you are forbidden, right, and my father is okay. So then it's seen as a partial vow, and then everyone would be seen as permitted, or the exact opposite, meaning that when you say you, and you, that seems to break up the vow into different parts, and then you could say one person is forbidden and the other person is permitted. Daf 26 tells us, right, continuing with this idea, do we focus, right, this is a machloket, do we focus on the first thing that a person says, right, that's their initial or original intention, or do we focus on the last thing that they said, right? Oh, no, I changed my mind, and now this is really what I meant, right? And that's going to take us across through this masechet when we discuss, right, how do we understand when a person says, let's say, multiple things. Do we say, I'm going with the original intent and that's it? Or do I say, no, the person changed their mind and I'm going by the last thing that was said? So again, the Gemara explains again this idea of when is it, if it's partially annulled, it's completely annulled, versus when do we break up the vow into different parts, and therefore one person can be, one part will be permitted or annulled, and the other part will stay still valid. So here the Gemara goes into what the language will look like based on how the person takes the vow in the first place, right? If you say you can't have benefit and you are like him and you are like him, right? So then it seems that everybody is based on the first person. If the first person was the father and we're permitting, so now everybody after him, right? It's like a chain reaction. Everyone after him is going to be permitted, right? If it's only the last one, so then only the last person will be permitted, not anybody before. And if it's the person in the middle, so then we can understand, right? Anybody after that person will be permitted. Anyone before will still be forbidden. So that is um, this idea of partial annulment versus complete annulment. Let's go back to this idea of, right, if I would have known, right, or and a shogeg, unintentional, right? So let's say a person says, I won't eat onions because they're bad for your heart, right? And then they find out that there's a certain onion that's good for your heart, right? So then, right, maybe therefore, right, because you meant only to prohibit things that are bad for your heart. Now, one onion is good for your heart. So now maybe because that one onion is okay, now maybe all onions are okay because we just got, we kind of invalidated the entire statement. Right? Or, right? Or no, right? Only partially, right? Part of the vow is prohibited and part is permitted, right? So we have an example on Daf 27, right? I won't eat the fruits that are in this basket, right? And then you find out that there's this really good fruit that you love in the basket, right? So then can he eat that one fruit and then nothing else? Right? Or do we say no? Once you say, oh, no, I didn't mean it, so then we annul the entire vow, and therefore you can eat anything in the basket, right? What if I say, I won't have any benefit from these 5 people, and then one of them becomes permitted, right? Are the rest still prohibited, or are they permitted? Okay, next Mishnah, next type of neder, neder onsin. Okay, this is the 4th type. What are neder? Right, ones means something that is beyond my control. So if I take a vow where there are circumstances beyond my control, so what is that? What does that look like? Right. So let's say people wanted, again, I guess they really wanted their friends to eat over, and I guess the friends didn't want to. But here the Mishnah says a person wants their friend to eat over with him. And then again, he couldn't make it and he got sick, or the child got sick, or he couldn't get across the river, right? We would say their car broke down, right? So then that vow is not binding because again, they wanted to come, but they didn't. So whatever was the condition of the vow, that's going to be null and void. So the Gemara explains, right? Let's say a person gave all of his documents to the court, and he says, if I don't get back in 30 days, so you can keep, right, anything in my bank account. And then he didn't make it back, but because of something out of his control, so Rav Huna says the court can keep it, right? Meaning you said you were going to get back, you didn't get back, so that's it, right? Rava says, no, this is honest. This is out of your control, and therefore the original statement is annulled, and the court cannot keep all of his property, right? Let's say we actually learned this before, right? This is your get. This is your divorce. If I don't come back within 12 months, and then let's say he dies, that would be the biggest out of your control, right? He dies. The Gemara tells us she is divorced. I don't care. Meaning, if you really wanted to divorce her, you should have divorced her in the beginning. And the fact that you didn't make it, so it must be you wanted to divorce her, and therefore she does get the get. Or right again, here it seems that we don't say that if something is out of your control, we annul the original statement. Here the Gemara says, well, maybe this is different in terms of divorce. Again, right? We learned in Yevamot, we learned in Ktuvot. We want to make sure that people do not get messed up, and therefore we're going to, especially if the husband dies, we're going to say that she was originally divorced from the beginning, right? What if we say, here's your get if I don't come back in 30 days, and then he comes back, but he can't get into town because, right, there's no ferry, right? He can't get across the river. Again, the Gemara says she gets the get. Here it seems, again, it's out of his control. Why doesn't it become invalid? And here the Gemara says, if it's something that's out of your control, but probable, right? Meaning, right? If every day that you go to work, there's traffic, so saying, oh, I'm so sorry I was late to my meeting because of traffic, right? Maybe you should have left half an hour earlier, right? You know that there's always traffic, right? So when things are probable, so then it's not seen as ones, meaning it's not seen as out of your control, and therefore it isn't annulled. And here there's a very famous discussion in Aramaic. The concept is asmachta lo kanya. Asmachta means when I don't fully consent to something, but I say it, do I really mean it? And the biggest example of this is gambling, right? If I say, right, $100 on black, right? Do I really mean to give you $100? Or do I really believe I'm going to win and I didn't mean to give it to you, right? And that's discussion later in the Gemara, right? Am I stealing if I win that $100? Right? Or do you say, no, you put it in the middle, so you put it in the middle, right? You gambled, right, with your money. Or, right, the Gemara says, so the concept of asmachta lo kanya means I don't really mean to give up that $100. And therefore, you can't take the money because I didn't really mean to give it up. So here again, right, did the person really mean if I don't get back in 30 days, no matter what, here's your divorce? Or did he mean like, no, I'll be back, right? And it's an interesting question when, right, the halacha seems to be asmachta kanya. No, it is binding, right? If you put that $100 in the middle of the table, you gambled, right? You understood that there was a possibility that you would lose that money, right? Same thing here, right? And it goes back to the case with the court. If the guy didn't come back, so the court gets his estate. Okay, next Mishnah talks about Nedarim that you're forced into making. So what's the case, right? If someone is, right, says, I'm going to kill you if you don't give me, right, your whatever. Let's say you have a lot of produce, right? If you don't give me all of your apples, I'm going to kill you, right? And you say, oh, no. Those fruits I sanctified, right? Or those are truma. You can't have them, right? They're forbidden to eat. Or I already designated those to give it to the king, so you can't take them, right? But you didn't, right? So the Gemara says if you say it in order because you really fear for your life, or it's to prevent someone from taking your things, right? One case is it's a tax collector, though we'll talk about the tax collector in a minute. The Mishnah says that this vow is, you can take the vow, right, even though you're lying, right? Here, Lynn, this goes back to what we were saying in the very, very beginning, right? What if you don't really mean it, right? Right, I promise I did X when you know you didn't. So here the Mishnah says, if it's to protect your property or to protect yourself, you can basically lie. Let's continue on the top of 28, right? Beit Shammai say you can only take a vow, but you can't take an oath. Beit Hillel say you can even take an oath. Again, there's a machloket. What if I add to what they say, right? I add more things that will be prohibited to me, right? Beit Shammai say no, Beit Hillel say it's okay. What if, hold on, right? What if, so now the Gemara says,
wait a minute. What do you mean if it's the tax collector, right? If you owe money in your taxes, right, we have another very important, famous concept. In Aramaic, the concept is called dina dimalchuta dina, which means that the law of the land, right, the secular law, right, the foreign law of this land is law to us, right? If the Jews live in America, you cannot cheat on your taxes, right? That is not okay, right? We hold that right? We believe that you need to keep the laws of the land. So what do you mean I can take this vow for the tax collector? Here the Gemara says, no, no, no. We're not talking about a regular tax collector, right? Let's say this is someone who there is no standardized amount and the person can collect whatever he wants, right? So then you can protect your property by any means. Or this is a self-appointed person who decided he's going to collect money for the king. Nobody gave him that authority over you, and therefore you can say what you need to say in order to protect your property, right? What if I say all the fruit of the world are prohibited to me, right? If this isn't the king's, so that seems to be a little unreasonable. What if I say all of the fruits of the world are prohibited to me today? That doesn't seem to be a very strong vow, so that's not going to work. So the Gemara actually says that in this situation where you're being coerced to lie, right? If you say all the fruits of the world should be prohibited to me, but in your heart you add only today, so then that works, right? Even though what you said is not today, right? And in general, we've seen this before, right? You need to say what you mean, otherwise it doesn't work. Here, the Gemara says, in this specific situation, you can say something and mean something else, and we will right, we will take you for, your word of what you meant over what you actually said. Here there's a machloket if you can initiate an oath or a vow, or our case in the Mishnah is only if, they hold a gun to your head and they say, swear to me that you are telling the truth, right? So that is the machloket. Okay, last Mishnah for today. Let's say a person says, these trees are like a sacrifice, meaning I'm sanctifying these trees if they don't get cut down. Or this garment is sanctified if it doesn't get burnt. So the Mishnah says they become sanctified and you can redeem them afterwards, meaning when something is sanctified, you can redeem it onto money. The money goes to the temple. The object becomes permitted. So the Mishnah says that works. What if you say these things are sanctified till they get cut down or till they get burnt? So then they become sanctified. But there's no redemption, and we'll see what that means. So here, the Gemara says, wait a minute, let's try to understand what is the case. The case is that there's a hurricane outside, right? And a person thinks, oh my God, everything is going to blow down, everything is going to break down. So the person says, if it doesn't get knocked down, so then it's going to get sanctified, right? Because he really believes it's going to burn down or it's really going to break down. So the Gemara says, even if you thought that that it won't get knocked down, right? Again, here, it is a valid vow, right? Here, as opposed to what we've mentioned till now, meaning even if you were hoping that the tree, right, you assumed that it was going to get knocked down because there was a hurricane outside and it stayed together. So now that becomes sanctified because you said as long as it stays together, it is sanctified, meaning we are taking your words at face value, and therefore it is a valid vow and it will become sanctified. Okay, we are going to stop here. We will continue next week, Be'ezrat Hashem. We are going to continue. Next week will be at our regular day and time. Sorry for all the changes, but next week will be regular time. So looking forward to seeing everyone. Yes, and Chodesh Tov. This week is Rosh Chodesh, Thursday and Friday. So wishing everyone a Chodesh Tov.
Thank
Thank
you,
you, everyone.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.